going live on all those social platforms. So anybody that is watching on the social platform that gets cut off a little bit, they're just going to have me cut off, not our guest speakers. So again, if you're in the audience and you're a little bit shy, you could also tweet a question at SEO Meetup and I'll ask it for you. So Devin and Carlos, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks for inviting us to speak here. Thanks for coming in and doing this in person and being willing to do events. We're all taking our best swing at figuring all this out these days. So Devin Kelley, Carlos Manriquez, we're both with Method Savvy, and as you see on the cool little video that Carlo whipped up behind me here, we do a lot of things here at Method Savvy kind of across the marketing board, brand experience and growth acceleration. And originally, if we go back to scheduling this event, we'd hope to have our kind of founder here, Jake, speaking about SEO and probably something far more technical than what we could speak to. But apparently there's a competition between his anniversary, which is tonight, and this event. And for some reason, he chose to be elsewhere. So Carlos and I are doing our best to contribute here on probably a less technical level than Jake would. But it let us talk about something really cool that we spend a lot of time thinking about, which is content. And everybody asked us about, because we have a studio here in the office, how can we create more content that is not written content, right? Back in the day, you could just spin up blog posts or white papers and say, great, I built a kind of content library. Well, anyone can do that now. So what is a way in which we can kind of differentiate ourselves? Well, Google owns YouTube. YouTube has a lot of traffic. They like promoting YouTube traffic because they make money off of it too. And frankly, there's just a lot of questions out there SEO-wise that we would prefer to see the answers to in a video format or a visual format than we would read about them. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. We've kind of themed this doing the hardest thing first, because to supercharge your SEO related to multimedia content, you can't kind of do the dip your finger in kind of approach that, oh, I want to rank for this term, so I'm going to write a blog post about it kind of strategy that maybe you have in the past. So Carlos and I are going to bounce back and forth between who kind of covers what content here. Again, Devin Kelley, VP of Client Services. I know a little bit about a lot of things here, not a lot about anything in particular. So I'll cover some of the kind of SEO or content strategy items here. And then Carlos is kind of the brains behind our studio space here and a lot of the content that we produce in the multimedia space. So he's going to come at this from a different direction than we look at kind of how things rank, but rather how we tell the story that we want to rank at the end of the day. Quick promo on us. Method Savvy is a consultancy that makes things. We spend a lot of time talking with folks about what they're trying to accomplish and then going about figuring out how best to accomplish that, and we'll actually do the work on the back end. The reason that we think it's important to do both of these things is that everybody in marketing today is a little bit of everything. You can't go just be an SEO guy and not understand multimedia. You can't not understand content strategy. You can't not understand web development and content management systems and things like that. So we're all in this kind of space where we have to be a little bit of everything these days. And we break that down into 3 buckets: brand, experience, and growth acceleration. A lot of the SEO stuff that people think about in terms of traditional SEO tactics falls into the growth acceleration bucket. Let's optimize my site. Let's go ahead and look at our title tags. Let's look at building a link structure or a link strategy. But we want to elevate this a little bit to say, what are the experiences that we want to create for folks when they do land on a property of ours or when they are asking for information about an area in which we have expertise? So talked a little bit about this. We won't spend much time on brand experience. Again, this can become any experience. So you guys may have heard this as well. Everybody on our client list is asking us about more ways to create more content that is more differentiated. We've got a room over there that's kind of hidden away. Voice studio, podcasts, things like that. We've got space over there for video, photography, everything else. Why? Because everybody's asking about this and everybody thinks it's hard. We really want to break down those kind of challenges and be able to help people create more stuff faster. Why? So we can do things like build channel plans, push to advertising, supercharge your social presences, make your web properties more enabling, more exciting, more visually stimulating. So cover all those buckets, and then we'll take this back into kind of an SEO strategy side of things and look at SEO performance. This is our SEO performance wheel. It's a mix of a whole bunch of things that you guys are probably familiar with from having a background in this space. And we look at kind of charting this wheel in a way that helps people understand where there may be gaps in their strategy and where they may be missing things along the way. So this gives us kind of a way to understand what's working and what's not, for us to go build a plan around and say, okay, great, what can we do to kind of upfit your SEO strategy or structure? Then, and this is just an example from some client work that we've done, we can look at building a content matrix to say, hey, how do we build stuff that's going to help us rank for where we have gaps or just do better in terms of like long-term building or structuring content. And so this is kind of broken down between emotional and rational content, and then awareness and purchase or awareness and transaction, depending upon the business. And then looking at all the different things that you are doing or could do that might help you either be more persuasive, be more entertaining, look to drive purchase at the end of the day. Well, that's really cool, but this seems like a lot of work, seems like a lot of stuff. How do we go ahead and figure out how this all actually gets done? And so with that, I'm going to kick it over to Carlos, let him talk for a couple of minutes about, hey, we have a business, we have smart people doing smart stuff. We need to go backtrack into building this stuff. How do we do that?
Can you guys hear me? Good. Yeah, so with that said, we do a lot, and not just brand campaigns and things like that, and email marketing and things, but what I wanted to focus on is what they brought me on to, is to understand what video content means to our clients, and how do we promote that, how do we slice and dice it, how do we do what we've done in the past, what I've done all my career, and start to find out different ways to kind of collaborate with the client to say, what is your goals, what is your message, and then not only just build the one thing, but how do we do the one and produce a lot from that? So that kind of targets a lot to what we can do with SEO. So absolutely, video has its advantages. You know this, we all know this, we live in an age that if you're not doing any kind of video marketing, then why aren't you doing that? So all the way from telling your story, your brand story, or your product, or anything like that, and just creates a level of authenticity, and just that social engagement. There's a social element on that, and that how do we build that so people can have more awareness? How do we have more keywords, more tags, more things like that helps us to keep video engagement, but also just stay on your page longer. So here you can see a lot of things why there's so many advantages. And why? Because it's accessible. I think that we kind of mirror our market, and we're watching Hulu more. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram and YouTube a lot. But a lot of things that we do, in particular, are landing pages. Like, how do we build campaigns? How do we say, hey, this is another feature that we can put out there that tells a broader story. It has more message. It has more capabilities to have form contacts and things like that. So home pages, social platforms, and everywhere. We're just used to that right now. And just took a couple different measurements from Vidyard, and just why is because people are saying that because of the engagements, they're buying more, they're staying on, they're understanding more of the process of engagement. So watching more, leads to more sales, leads to more contacts, just more awareness and things like that. How do we do that? Just at a really good level is that we look at what you're doing, where you are now, and then where you want to go. So we do some quick video audits, and I just recently built a little widget or an Excel sheet that said, how can we take what you're doing? Is it working? Maybe go in there and get some YouTube data, percentages, click rates, and things like that. Say it's more than just net new. It's how do we use things that you've already done? And how do we say, let's reskin it? And if it doesn't work, if it's hurting your brand, let's get rid of it, or let's have some other ways that we can influence more of the market. So this is kind of just a list of just deeper dives, like your brand message, what's your story, your product, what do you need, what your needs are, and things like that. And if we go into a deeper dive, we go into, like, again, like I said, what do we keep, reuse, redo, and remove? I look at that from a sense of me storytelling for a long time, and everybody wanted that one silver bullet. It doesn't work. What works is how do we do that and build your foundation of your product, your brand, but also build a campaign using video. And that's kind of how I look at it, is how do you refresh your strategy, creating new content, looking at the old. Here's a system that I kind of use to say, if I'm looking at your YouTube channel, what are you doing? Is it organized first? So people can easily just see where the product is, what their interest level, and all that. So what I try to do is say, I look at it, is it relevant? Is the quality of the video shot well? Is the audio, is it going straight to your message? What's the point? And I think a lot of people, a lot of clients that we hear from, they just want these one-offs, and it's like you're missing the whole point of this. Storytelling is just not the one thing, it's the many things behind it, the influences of how do we get to people to just be more engaged, to see your brand, to see your product, and to be able to make business decisions that way. So in particular, I just come up with all the slews of videos that I've tried to do and I've done, using different channels and different series and like Devin said, podcasts and things like that. So there's so many things that we can do with it, which I'm excited about because most of our clients are very much haven't dipped into probably a third of this. So I feel like we should do more explainers, more social things. But one thing I like to do is client testimonials, because what better way that you sell yourself by your friends and your peers and your clients saying, you guys helped me out. So I just kind of wanted to do you wanted to get into this example. But before we go into client testimonials, I'll bring it back to Devin.
Yeah, before you get to that example,
I
wanted to highlight a couple of things. And I don't know, we were thinking about pizza, so we used pizza examples. So wanted to highlight a couple of things just like story-wise, more broadly here. So you guys have probably all seen this view, right? You search for something on YouTube or on Google, and you end up with a result that puts videos first, right? So in this case, like how to make wood-fired pizza. It's a pretty top of funnel kind of query here. I want to learn how to do something. Well, I want us to notice a couple of things from like an SEO perspective here. One is that even with a pretty direct query like that, we've got a little bit of everything in kind of the titles of these videos here. I just go out of my way to highlight that when you're auditing from an SEO perspective and saying, hey, how to make a wood-fired pizza is a question that almost universally would be better answered with a video than like reading 200 or 300 words. But we've got a couple of videos there that have kind of purely answered that question. So just look at the opportunity here for you to say, hey, I want to answer this question better and do it directly. But in addition to that, there are these sections here where we have key moments broken down within these videos. So someone has built a long form video that's almost 15 minutes long, that at this point is about 5 years old, that is the story of how to make wood-fired pizza. Google, YouTube has already gone about breaking down that video into 10 different discrete questions that may be asked having to do with that subject. So just want to highlight this for you guys when you're thinking about how you think about content and how you think about the way that this is being broken down by Google that you don't have to do, right? So if you take this back to like 5 or 10 years ago in like SEO strategy, you were mining for these long tail questions that are in here, having to build pages for them, having to go, write a blog post on this or write a series with all these individual questions broken down. And what's happened over time here is that Google's actually gotten better at either transcribing or taking the transcription you've provided, looking at when people enter or leave this video, what content they're absorbing, and flipping this out to you without us doing much of anything at all, and dealing with the long tail for you, right? So I want to highlight this back to Carlos's point that like, don't miss the forest despite the trees here in saying that you can take one of those core kind of, main topics that you'd look at with a topic cluster, build a good piece of content about that, understand what these pieces of that content may look like, and then let Google do the work for you in breaking this down, where this same video may rank for every one of these individual questions, but you still got to answer them all by dealing with the big question up front. And cover a couple more things here, just like proof in the pudding. These are actually from YouTube and Google themselves in what they call creating the digital story arc. They're giving us, as like a Google partner agency, content like this to help us break down and structure content on video so it is best absorbed by users. And so the traditional story arc that you see on the left-hand side here is kind of your 3-act play, right? That's how we're kind of used to hearing about things. That's how you tell longer form stories. But when you get to these kind of individual sections that are broken down, people have a specific question, they want to know the answer to that question, and then we'll take the context afterwards, right? So when we're building long form, we can stick to that traditional story arc. When we're looking at shorter form or how we deal with these, like, you know, interior questions, the more specific ones, they're recommending we approach it this way. And again, these are slides directly from Google on this and kind of the digital emerging story arc. If I'm looking for an answer to something, you know, really quickly on my phone, like how hot should my wood-fired oven be when I'm cooking pizza? Well, if you're asking that, you're probably already got the oven turned on, right? I'm not watching 15 minutes at that point. I want to get right to the point. I want to understand what's happening here. But Google may drop me into minute 130 on the 15-minute video to give me that answer. So, this is oftentimes the way we look at this. This is like the long form story that you're telling versus a more transactional story that looks more like this. Again, flipping that story arc around. So instead of the climax at the end, we're pushing it to the front. And then a way that we can go about doing this, and this is kind of helpful when you think about content and content formats, is that your story arc, if we go back to here, you know, you'd say, hey, how do I tell a story with like the crescendo in the front, right? With the kind of most important part up front. Well, we oftentimes use an empathy mapping exercise to build out content strategies. It's built around the idea of what is your audience looking to do, think, feel, and understand. And do is going to be all your really transactional questions. Think is going to be what are you kind of considering in this process. Feel and understand become more kind of ephemeral in their thinking. This is a really good guide to think about, like, how do we tell a broader story, but if we need to, within that story, tell more, you know, like direct, succinct stories within that again, Google's doing the work to help us understand. So I'll flip this back to Carlos to talk about like how we've captured this and how we break it down, because we got to tell the long form version to tell the short form version.
Yeah, so client in this particular case was Catapult. And they're a local client that has a lot of clients around the nation. And one of their clients is Rack Room Shoes. So they came to us with we need a client testimonials. And this is why I love doing these, is because it's authentic. The stories are there, the passion's there. We just have to capture it. We have to put it together. So it comes from the idea, all the way from the thought at the very beginning, the testimonial style, this is what we're doing, and then trying to structure that, get it to paper, and say what kind of video do we want, what kind of story. And going back to Devin, that slide, the story arc, is that we use that all the time. And the beauty about it is organically, if we want to flip it to where the climax is at the end or the beginning, that's what drives a lot of attention and a lot of our videos to be like, it's not the same thing. It's not a cookie cutter. We have the authority and we have the creativity to just do what we want. But we always start with a plan. We go into which is great, is that the authentic stories coming in, and it's because we ask the right questions. The questions of, who you are, what's your problem, and who solved your problem. So that goes from design to production to post and to final. It takes about 6 weeks for us to do one. So this is a little bit of that kind of 3-act structure. The character setup, we interviewed her to say who you are, what's your title in the business profession, what makes your business so special, why do you do what you do? So we try to evoke that kind of emotion up front to kind of make sure that we get that, and we do this kind of structure through all of our clients. And it's all the same, but we get to kind of mix and match, the kind of story we want to do. Again, Act 2 is usually the problem. What are the challenges you had with your clients and your customers? So they're telling us, again, these true stories that they're either suffering or they need to troubleshoot. And then the solution is the client that got us there, is like Catapult surprised us, that helped us through COVID, and they have multiple services that we like, and they're on call all the time. So we try to put that together, and we get a CTA at the end. It's like, what do you do at the end? You call them, or there's a URL or something like that. But in that, which is really cool, is we usually shoot like an hour worth of content. And we transcribe everything. And then we go in there and we try to make this story through all the acts. While we're doing that, the bigger picture here is really not the 50,000 foot, this is the big video, is we're thinking about how do we make these smaller stories? How do we say or utilize this content to put on the in the web to have more attraction? To say, hey, I see the big video here that's a 2-minute piece, but then I have all these like smaller videos. So in the bigger piece, this is kind of what it looks like from 0 to 2 minutes. Like we show the client, we do some motion graphics. There's a lot of B-roll during the day. And then also just kind of finish with I call it the warm and fuzzy, leave them hanging to say, hey, the person that helped me, I'm better off now. And then there's a CTA. Again, this is the, getting extra content this way with the structure that we have helps us to go in and start to think about, like, how do we get 30-second cuts from this? We work with the writer or our strategist to say, let's build a stinger at the front end, what the question is, and then let that person solve that question. And we're going to turn out like 20 of these videos. Very easy to do. So this is kind of what it looks like. You have your main video, that's 2 minutes, and then you start to see like these smaller videos that we just put an art card in front of this. But you can see, like, we can keep building this, and then we can actually have multiple videos. If we had other client success, we can do some mashups together to kind of build a bigger campaign.
Cool. So building on what Carlos just shared there, back to kind of the theme of our conversation, is do the hardest thing first when you're thinking about building video content. If we go back 2 slides for Carlos here and said, hey, if I wanted to make a social video or do a transactional piece of content here on how has Catapult supported you on being your best, like, that would take as much work as it would for us to build this entire video itself, right? And if Google's going to do the work to pull these kind of micro questions out for you, why bother to answer the small questions, right? We did, 1 day of shooting on this to build a 2-minute video that's ultimately turning into about 10 assets that's really just laddering up exactly the structure that Google has provided here, right? We built one piece of content that's 12 or 13 minutes long, and they've already spun this out into kind of the micro content that we need. So this is different than how a lot of businesses think about like content development, and like focusing on what, from an SEO perspective, I want to rank for how I shape the crust on my pizza. Well, the best way to do that may not be to make a video directly about that. It may be to go back and make the 15-minute video that provides the overarching story with that question answered within it, because it's going to make you more authoritative on the subject. There's going to be links within here, and anyone who's looking to answer that question is probably going to have gone through the rest of this process, right? So very much different than like, I want to dip my toe in and see how this is working, or see how my strategy is going, or can we rank better for one keyword versus like rising tide raises all boats. Message here for anything related to like multimedia content is like, bite the bullet, go do the hardest thing, the long form version of this first, and make sure that you're capturing all the kind of pieces of the puzzle, the stories along the way, the chapters that you want to cover in that longer form story, because it's way too easy for us just to jump to the places that are valuable for us. So kind of last thing here, you guys have probably seen something like this before. If you're not using Also Asked, you should. This is a super cool tool. It makes you look really smart in meetings. But this is the one core term, wood-fired pizza, that we were talking about before. And it breaks down based on search traffic, what are the most common queries that are then a modification of wood-fired pizza, and then what are the modifications on those search terms from there. So if you guys can't see this, wood-fired pizza is our core term. What is wood-fired pizza is the top. Is wood-fired pizza better? Does wood-fired pizza taste different? How long do wood-fired pizzas take to cook? It's your who, what, when, where, why that you would normally take in kind of developing a content strategy, right? I have a core term, then I'm looking at what are the basic things that I would spin out of that. But coming out of each of these, what is wood-fired pizza? There are a whole bunch of other terms that are variations of that. So why use a wood-fired pizza oven? Why does brick oven pizza taste better? Is wood-fired pizza dough different? How hot does a wood-fired pizza oven get? What is a brick oven called? Can you use any wood in wood pizza ovens? All those could be tied back to that core story, and all of this could be summed up in a, hey, here's how to make the best wood-fired pizza, or here's like everything you need to know about wood-fired pizza with these as the breakdown questions and answers. And instead of working from the long tail into the core, when you're doing this multimedia stuff, work the other direction, right? Tell the core story first with all the kind of long form breakdowns within it. And something like Also Ask can help you build out what is this version of the micro questions that you're breaking into kind of a longer story, because you can go punch this in right now, wood-fired pizza, I don't know, best software for accounting or whatever it is that you're trying to sell out there and that you want to rank for. Understand what the kind of breakout questions would be and then build them back into a story structure like this that can allow you to build the long form piece of content that will address all of the deeper questions. Does that make sense? Follow for everybody? Great. Happy to take some questions from there. Go back to any of these slides, kind of share them with you. All this is kind of freely or publicly available stuff. So if you want me just to pause on something, happy to. But is that useful perspective on multimedia and SEO for you guys?
So I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
How finessed do the videos need to be for them to rank? Because I've actually found that the less fancy the video, the more it tends to, and I see the fancy here.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if there's a place for the fancy or.
Yeah, so I'll answer and then kick to Carlos.
Yeah.
So we just went through one of the audits that Carlos was talking about for a company that did like home repair and cleanup, right? Like water damage and stuff like that. And their corporate videos done by their corporate marketing folks were all getting outranked by a couple out of Ohio that shot all theirs in their basement. So that happens all the time, and for a couple of reasons. One is that people who like doing this tend to just produce way more content than like higher production value people tend to. If you go try to quote out, come on, there we go. If you try to quote out this type of work with a lot of video agencies, they don't want to do it. They want to do the 2-minute and be done. And everything else ends up on the cutting room floor. So one is just volume. Like they've become the authority as like the Southern Ohio cleanup folks, and they're now ranking nationally. The other thing is that when you're kind of speaking or just conveying your knowledge and it's not cut up into marketing copy, it oftentimes does a better job answering these questions, because they know what those questions are from their experience and they're speaking to them. But you can probably talk about like how we run like this video capture with somebody like that. And like you said, there's 6 hours of shooting that turn into a 2-minute video here. So we're trying to make it as close to that as we can in capturing their authentic voice.
Do you have like stats and results from stuff you've done to show that it's better than what a company could just create on its own by letting people take their phones and create content? Like this strategy versus just ad hoc.
Yeah, so I would kind of approach that, because I think there's two challenges there. One is that your traditional video production folks want to do the 2-minute spot. They want to tell one story, they want to make it look perfect, and that be the content. And then all this other stuff that could be reused and repurposed doesn't get used. Then there's the flip side, where you guys have probably seen like a YouTube ad with a guy like holding his phone like this, telling you how he could become like a real estate mogul like him, except he can't get anybody else to hold his phone for him. So like, how much of a mogul is he, right? So there's a place for that type of content, and it's way kind of down market, and then it becomes super easy production-wise to build something like this. You can kind of do it quickly, spin a bunch of it out, but like, how seriously are you taking him? And then I think there's a big meaty middle, which is where most of us, and Carlos mentioned this, where like, people don't know how to do this themselves. They think if I'm going to produce a video, this becomes like car commercial territory, and like we're in Super Bowl pricing, land. So like, I think there's probably 20% on both ends of like people who are willing to just like spin this stuff out on their phone, and then there's people who are really comfortable with like build a 2-minute spot once a year, and then there's everybody else in the middle that is just kind of figuring this out.
Yeah, we work with a lot of clients that we focus on their brand first, their brand message. That's where it's all coming from. Like, I know you guys know Dollar Shave Club. That was the first one that came out that was low budget. He did it himself. He did all that, but they had the ability to do that, and they had the desire to hit that market. That's their market. So when we look at, companies that we work with, Lenovo, and, do they really want something like that? It's going to hurt their brand, right? So we pay special attention. We do have, not that they're bad or they're risky. It's just that we pay attention to the look, the feel, the message. Like when Durham came to us, we know that's a totally different vibe. That's something that we can have fun with, but we're having fun, producing, great. And again, I've been working in places where, they're big, they're this size, productions and things like that. Is it needed? I don't know. I don't think it is. But what we do is we want to get to content quick, and I have 20 years of experience filming, and understanding is more about the capture. It's more about the conversation I'm having with people to get that ability to say, get me to the reason why people want to hear you. That's the first message. Let me look good. If I have to shoot it on my iPhone, I will, but I'll still make it look good depending on the brand.
Yeah. I think that there's a little bit of difference here, where what you're doing is you're creating a full story. You're creating this long tail, you're creating longer content and then breaking it down, whereas people are using phones, or where it's more of what you said at the beginning. You're talking about just getting snippets where it may not get the reach, it may not get the full lift of everything else. So there's definitely the brand piece, I think, is what you're focused on here. Companies have brand standards, and I guess it comes down to what's the brand that you want out there and what standards you want.
Well, and it's also the lift, right? So like, if you want all of these questions answered, on the right here, I want a content strategy that picks those off. The way you might have done that in the written world, 5 to 10 years ago, is say, I'm going to build a content strategy with blog posts based on this, and we're going to roll out once every 2 weeks a new one of these, and at the end, we're going to rank better for wood-fired pizza. You can pay $200 a blog post for that, stretch it out over the quarter, and go do that. You can't with video, right? Like, even if you have somebody who's real competent with their phone and doing this, like that same structure is hard to build. The lighting is hard to replicate once a week when you go do these things. Like, all of that is harder. So like, message here is like, if you go do and shoot that once and then drip this out once every 2 weeks, the world at large still thinks you're doing the same thing. They're still getting, similar touch point at a similar time. But the way you think about producing that and the work that you do and how you think about that, because of the lift that's associated, even if you want to make it look super authentic, it's just easier to set that up all at one time, capture the core topic and work through than the other way around.
Yeah, I believe that if you get to this first, always do your paper edits first. Before you decide what camera, what lighting, what anything, that right there is the story. And if I don't care if it's mom and pop wood fire or a national chain, everybody's doing the same thing. Whether or not you pick up a fancy camera or not, or you go to Best Buy and say, I'm going to do this, and your passion's going to come through, what you want to produce. But this right here, your game plan, is going to be crucial. I used to work the other way around. At the very beginning of my career, everybody wanted the one video, and it was really, really difficult because everybody was producing the same thing, same look and feel. But once you work backwards, I think that it is the hardest thing first, because content comes from a script, comes from an idea. It's harder to think about, like, where are we going through this? You can hire, it doesn't matter. You can hire different levels of production. And that's kind of where, my niche here is, like, my experience to hit this market. It's game changer, because we don't need a giant space. We need very small equipment. We just need belief and the ability to make shit rock. It's that important to me,
Yeah. Do you have a video you can show us of the work you've done for someone?
I don't
There's
know
a
if
link in there, but I don't know if we have it wired for sound.
Yeah, let's see. Oh, maybe.
The video that we had playing on the way in.
Yeah, I did that today, just real quickly. Is this one? Yeah. Oh, let's see.
See if it'll buffer all right.
Hi, I'm Julie Barr. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources at Rack Room Shoes.
Is that terrible for you guys? Can you hear?
When people ask me, I want to go into HR, what do you think? I tell them HR is really a tough position to be in, but I wouldn't change it for a thing. I absolutely love what I do. What makes Rack Room special is the people. We are about 5,000 employees in 36 states, so we take care of our employees. We have a great benefits program for our employees. We are currently working through some compensation analysis to make sure we're paying our people appropriately. I too live that taking care of the people aspect of the Rack Room values. I love that I'm finally able to do that and speak that and live that in my career. I couldn't have done that without Catapult, quite frankly. The people that I like and engage with at Catapult have been really personable, and they care and they understand where our challenges are. Everybody seems really willing to help, takes an interest in the business and what we do. So not only do they know that I'm Julie and I'm at Rack Room, they know that I'm Julie, I'm at Rack Room. DE&I is a huge priority for us in 2022. Throughout my career, I've sent people to training at Catapult, and I've taken
Almost made it.
training classes myself. The thing that makes it the best for me, and the thing that keeps me coming back to Catapult, is the fact that we have developed these personal relationships, and the Catapult employees take a real interest in our business. It's the personal relationships and the caring that Catapult portrays and gives to us that keeps me wanting to be a member of Catapult.
So that was the do it live portion of today. But Carlos, you can speak to this, that like Rack Room isn't even doing this type of video for themselves. Like they're not doing TV, they're not doing stuff like this. And Catapult's a much smaller business. So like Julie wasn't used to being on camera. She wasn't used to doing this. She was willing to do it as part of the partnership. And like, I think that's like the meaty middle, right? Like Rack Room's not even doing stuff like this. And she's having to figure out how this goes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of challenges that go in this before we even hit record. We have to understand brand standards, the voice, the message, the tone, to make sure that we are locking that in. It seems like it could be easy to say, but we have to work with our writer, our strategist, to say, how are we going to put this out there? But there's two. This one is because Catapult, our client, had a client, so we have to make two people satisfied, to look on brand. For instance, Catapult or Rack Room has other clients. Catapult has Nike as a client. So if we go to Nike, and we go with, and Nike is really, that's a great point, because Nike can do the handheld, flip phone, whatever look, and they can get away with that. Because part of their brand, if you look at like any kind of YouTube channel, you can go on there and see categories. Here's the more sophisticated levels, the top, C-suite level videos. That's kind of where this falls. I want to make them look good. I want to make sure, like, I'll spend more time. I have a makeup kit over here, and I'll say, Julie, you have a little shine. I need to take care of that because want that to be. But if it was just off the street, we do man on the street videos where it's like, this is what it is. We have a client called Roses. Their brand and their audience isn't this high level audience. It's people, genuine people, in a specific region that we say, well, we can't make it look so crisp because then it will be unbelievable. Then it's like, oh, we're trying to shoehorn in Target into a Roses kind of feel, and then that's going to have some backlash from a brand perspective and cause brand confusion. But so Roses is a good one. We went out and we said, we're going to use the same gear, and instead of it being lit well or anything, I'm going to handheld it and make it kind of float a little bit. But it's all about creativity and make it look authentic to the brand.
So basically, you use this for the 2-minute videos, and then you also created a long form video that you could use for YouTube?
Well, that's on YouTube. The long form's on YouTube as well, channels. You think about it, it's like, we're going to still put it on there. We're still going to tag it. We're still going to put our descriptions and everything because people are invested in a 2-minute piece. But then again, when we do the paper edit and we have all these like different questions like this, well, now we're starting to understand, like from our services, we want to build a campaign. We want to understand that they saw the value of producing more smaller chunks. Now this could live on Instagram, Facebook, not on YouTube, but why not? Why not put it on there? So that's what we do is we think about like the high level piece, but we work backwards because now, again, we have an hour worth of content, from that half day of shoot that, in my mind is a gold mine. It's like we got 40 videos right here that we can just crank out in a week's time. With Julie, yep. So if Rack Room wanted to bring their CEO, and that's what we do, we're shooting on Thursday, board members of another client's coming in, 3 interviews. We're just gonna go ahead and interview them. We don't know what it's gonna be right now, but we have the same kind of standard question, but tailored to their specific industry. That's what we're gonna do. Now we have it, and then we'll give it to our writer or marketing strategist, and she will go and kind of start to construct the story. But they can all live on its own. So maybe this one partner is talking about something different. That's another campaign. Another partner is going to talk about something different. But then we can do these mashups. I did that at Red Hat. When I was at Red Hat, we did a lot of stories out there. Why do they want to use our software? And we went from all over the place. And there was old content. That's why this is crucial. Let me get to this. This is crucial because the old content, you can still use it. You can still go back. I remember doing a mashup whenever they first got into the New York Stock Exchange at Red Hat, and I came in late to the party, but I said, it's still valuable. There's still something there, and it was filmed on square 4x3, so we're now on 60x9, but I said, well, I'll figure out a way to make it look authentic towards the brand of what Red Hat's used to. So it's the same thing when we do an audit of all these companies. We look at and we really get non-judgmental. We say, is this relevant? Does it still stand the test of time? You want to make it evergreen. Did you make that successful? And coming from a brand guy and a creative guy, I could say, really, without stepping on any toes, it's like, no, we need to get rid of this one, or we need to rewrite it. We can take the same script and put a new voiceover, a new sound. We don't have to do that new. We can just make it look better by just putting a little bit of muscle. But this is what I use all the time. And I introduced it here to say, think about it when we do our video audits with our clients, because we do brand, message, and video audits to say, are you being successful in this content?
Other questions? Go ahead.
The long-form video, the value of the SEO in that, do you ever take the video format and put it on page to ramp up SEO?
Fantastic question. Yes. And there's a lot of creativity that goes in there. I mean, nobody's going to read all this, but there's a lot of unique ways because these are all quotes. So you can have a still image of Julie and then pull a quote and then send it off to Instagram, all these other places. So you can do small quotes, but then again, when we go to thinking about what I think I was, landing pages. This page could be a Julie Rockstar landing page. I love her. She's awesome. She's great at her job. Maybe her company wants to make her like the person to call, the person that knows her stuff. We can put a lot of seminars of her and things like that. But all this dialogue can be used, can be quoted. A story can come from that. We can animate that story. Absolutely. I think that's a game changer. And then when we transcribe it, we can send it off to YouTube, to keep it there and have all those keywords in there.
So for the long-term video, you were saying that Google is doing the work to find those search queries.
Yep.
Right? Are they using the transcript? And how are they doing what? Are they just using the whole transcript and then pulling out based on what is being searched?
So we don't 100% know the answer to that question because they won't tell us, but two kind of guesses here. So one, if you look at and just like have spent some time with what's ranking video-wise here, many of the things that rank highly do not have transcriptions, whether it's on the page or like just dropped in the description here, which is also kind of best practice. But there are a couple of things that they are using, and we know from some of our partnership campaigns and things like that, that they're tracking this stuff. So Google certainly has its own and is working on doing it the best job possible of like understanding human voices on these videos. The other thing they're looking at is when people search for certain things, go watch this video when they're entering and when they're leaving. So when I see somebody come in and say, I'm looking to, shape my pizza, or how do I make my pizza round, and they're all leaving, right here, they're inferring that that section's over, and they've put together that the topic's changing. If you look back on some of this back to like 2017 and before, like there really weren't SEO best practices for this stuff. Most people weren't transcribing this stuff, even the people who were kind of YouTube power users. So two things there. One is that transcriptions are best practice. It helps Google read all this stuff in a more meaningful way, undoubtedly. But then they're also inferring like what's valuable and what's not based on people's actual behavior in the video and what that's relevant to.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, you can take that 2-minute piece that I did and convert that over to a SRT file, which is a text document for subtitles. So once you take that and load it in, Google sees all that, and it's keeping that stored there. And then when you start to chapterize, it's actually locking in and saying at this point, what's around this point, So, and it's, to his point, it's like, I don't know if this is what they do, but you can see a bunch of chapters, which before Google did chapters, we had to hand do chapters in Flash and all that stuff, which we couldn't use any keywords. And I did a lot of research this week because I want our rankings to get bigger, but everything has to do with, keywords within tags within Google, but how you name your video. What's the point of your video, your description of your video? If you want to copy and paste that subtitle in there, nobody's reading it, nobody's hitting more. They just want to hit the video. But the more, files or words you put on there, it's going to help out.
If you want to know more about like what Google's doing, it's natural language processing. And we actually use in one of our solutions to actually be able to figure out topics and stuff like that. But I also had a question. With the larger focus on accessibility, I saw in your video there's no closed caption or captioning on it. Is that something that you're starting to do more, and is that actually impacting some of the SEO because it's now within the video and stuff like that?
Yeah, sometimes it's out of our hands. It goes to the client, and the client uploads, that. But absolutely, I've had many clients that on even animations they want subtitles. and things like that. So to me, it's like you can click it on and off, but absolutely, yeah. If we have the control to, and we do most of the time, to do to put it, host it on their YouTube and put all the keywords and all that. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that's about format, right? So again, do the hardest thing first, right? Build the video that tells the story, and then you can look at what format it fits best in. So a couple of things. One is that there are a whole bunch of videos that rank very, very well that actually have no talk track to them at all, and maybe don't even have text on screen. Think like the old school BuzzFeed, like how to make a thing kind of thing, that instant, super fast. They got big on Facebook. Google still knows what they're telling you to do in there. So natural language processing helps with some of that, but still, I wanted to learn something, and I'm looking at when people enter and when people exit, and if they're not watching the first 10 seconds, or everybody's leaving after a minute, they're putting all that together. But if you capture that video content, you can then decide, do I want to break in and break this into sections and use some animation or some motion to do it? Do I want to use closed captioning across the entire time? Or with something like Facebook that doesn't autoplay with sound, do I want to include text over the video and make it look better, not necessarily closed captioning-ish, just because people watch that video better without audio on? You have all those choices after you tell the story. How you present that's just an editing decision. So back to Carlos's process document that we looked at, other direction. Here, that's all production stuff that once you get the content, you can decide, and you can, this used to be the thing to do several years ago when many other platforms weren't playing video with sound automatically, is you would cut versions of your social videos with text overlays and others without, and you were kind of dropping different things into different platforms, but it's all the same raw footage, right? It's all the same, tell the long form version first, and then you can fit it to the different platforms.
Yeah, to this slide, and I don't want to step on any of my friends out there in production world, but from here over is usually where a video production, that's what they do. They're really good. They're really craft oriented. I think what we're good at is the why. Why do we have to produce another one first? And if we don't have to do it, we'll figure out some other way. But even in the discussion of the format, is this a client testimonial? Is this a brand awareness piece? Is this a product, advertisement? It's something that we take consideration in. But it's pretty much we start to develop what it is, and then after that is who's going to solve this? Who's going to write this for us? If it's a passion piece that we just need new writing perspective. Or in this case, we're always leaning on the clients, to give us that. So once we do that, it's a formula, yes, but it depends on who's sitting in the seat asking those questions. We have a good Barbara Walters.
Yeah, and to your point about on page and how that works, and to Carlos kind of reuse or repurpose. We worked with a client in the fitness space this past fall who had hundreds, if not thousands, of fitness-oriented videos on YouTube that they'd annotated all the audio credits and all the stuff with, and they had not put any of it on their site. And so a core term for them was high intensity training. They wanted that as a content area, and they had hours and hours worth of YouTube content that related to it. That in the same way that you would build out a content pyramid overall, we just did it with cuts of videos that had been around since the beginning of COVID when they started filming everything that they did because they couldn't do stuff in person. So again, all that content still has value if you rethink of it through this SEO lens. And frankly, they've been doing the hardest thing all along, which was recording an hour workout every day all through COVID that we could just repurpose for them and turn into something that ultimately had more value from an SEO perspective.
So how much did their rankings go up when you started adding some of those snippets to the website?
They're just, it's still going up, and we're not through them all. There are hundreds of videos that can be cut up infinitely. I could tell you before we started moving video around though, their top ranking terms were for a recipe for green juice, which didn't actually have a lot to do with their business. So now that they're ranking for things that have to do with fitness, it's a big benefit for everybody.
Their videos are ranking or their websites?
their website's ranking and the videos are ranking too. So like they actually weren't transcribing any of the videos or breaking down like the workouts they were doing at all, but somebody was going through and putting in all the like audio video credits and like all that in there. So it was a process question as much as anything else, but you're actually being driven back to the YouTube video on their website most of the time, based on hitting those video links now. So you may notice sometimes when you see things like this, you may end up in different places when you click these links. Sometimes you end up on a website watching a YouTube video that's embedded in that page. Sometimes you end up on like a Vimeo link if it's not a YouTube one. And other times you just like they play the YouTube video right from here, especially if you're on mobile. So you can actually encourage them to put you on your property if you want to, if you embed that in and kind of build a landing page experience.
So like each video would have its own page and I guess some text on the page.
Theoretically, yeah.
Good.
You could put the entire transcription on the page. You know, in the like high intensity workout world, hey, we offer workouts like this. Here's an example of one. Here's some of the things we do throughout that workout. Break out the video clips along with it, just like you'd break out pieces of text, and you're essentially doing the same thing, creating a content hierarchy. And basically you have much meatier, you have more tools at your disposal in terms of like traditional SEO and building a page out that way. It's also significantly more work when Google will essentially do this for you. So part of that's, you know, what's the lift you're willing to take on? Because if they're going to break this out this way, what's the point of you kind of, you know, spending 3 hours per page trying to structure this stuff into a, you know, content structure that they may blow up anyway because they find people are entering or leaving at a better point.
Is this view on your internal account, or can anybody see this?
No, anyone can see this. So this is what you see when you Google.
Okay, now I see the keys.
Yeah, the key moments everybody sees, and all you got to do is click on that and it expands it, and it will break down for you the chapters of the story.
I mean, I'm not saying, I'm not seeing this as a plethora of information of like how I can actually build out my outreaches for my potential clients and actually use this as some of the key parts of the emails or something like that that I'm reaching out to.
Yeah, and if you take it back to what we were talking about before with like the do stuff's in the middle, the understands at the beginning and the end, right? Like what's the story arc that you have? Like it's all the same stuff. Google's giving you kind of like, they're building an appendix for you, whether you ask for it or not.
Probably a much better one than you could.
Yeah, then you can spend all the time you want on it. You're probably not going to beat them.
Is there like a video Google recommends to show you how this works in practice?
Not that I'm aware of. There's a much longer deck that's related to this, and we've added stuff like this to it that all workshops out, that we often do that's based on empathy mapping. But like, they will not tell you how to build that video. They will kind of give you guidance that like, stories like this work better. And back to the point Carlos made before about Dollar Shave Club. So that video when it launched also had a whole bunch of ad dollars behind it. And if you Google enough, you can find them talking about that. But also, that video was built. Do you see the crescendo right there in the beginning? That's your 5-second skip button. Mm-hmm. Fundamentally, that's what they're talking about here, is this curve is the normal curve that you see when you run YouTube advertisements. People stick around until they're forced to leave. A whole bunch of them leave regardless of what you're saying. Some stick around until 12 to 15 seconds, and then everybody drops off after that. So like, what are you doing? You're matching everybody's native behavior in doing so. And if you go watch the first 5 seconds of Dollar Shave Club, a bunch of weird stuff happens in the background right before you get to 5 seconds. Why? Because all of us want to know what's going to happen next. And if I can just get over that hurdle, I can keep you around for 12 to 15. Mm-hmm. Same thing's true for the Old Spice video. Yeah. You know, the like shirtless dude on the horse.
Yeah.
So it starts with a like super cropped view of just his face, and then it zooms out to him shirtless, and then it zooms out a little bit more to him sideways on the horse, right at 5 seconds.
And that's just the visual. Like there's audio,
Yep.
what the music track, like I've done not this way, but I had to do a stop animation piece for Christmas time, and it was going to be played on TV, and they picked 5 o'clock, and it's like, oh, that's whenever used car sales and all this stuff, and it's just so loud. So I knew that, and I said, well, I want to do mine a little bit more classic Christmas, very subtle, and it even just the audio of that was like a stop. Was like I heard used car, and it just dipped down, but everybody stuck on it, and
Other questions? Don't want to keep you guys here all night, although you're welcome, and I know Frank has big plans for the remainder of the evening.
All right, I want to thank you guys very much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
For a great presentation. So, a little side note related to what you guys have been talking about, the Raleigh SEO meetup since